Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Age Differently, Meaningful Conversations with Men. My name is Darius and Peter. I'm here with my co-host, Peter Callan, as well as our first guest, Dr. Ashkan Hayatdavoudi. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Morning, Darius.
Hello, Darius. Yes, really. It is. And welcome to our audience. Hopefully back for another meaningful conversation.
Absolutely. So before we get started, full disclosure, I am an investor in Ash's company. What's the old joke? You know, not only the president of, I'm a member as well. Ash is the one who started me on my journey of hair restoration. So Ash, personally, just really delighted to have you on with us today and share with our audience, you know, hair health and options for men that are noticing hair loss and want to do something about it. But before we dive into all that good stuff, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, and Darius and Peter, again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to your base here. My background is I'm a physician, lawyer. I grew up in Southern California, born in Iran. Been traveling south in Southern California since I landed here, currently in San Diego. I'm a serial entrepreneur with currently involved with a couple companies. One of our companies is a company named Presidium Health that provides concierge level healthcare services to underserved members of our community that have a disproportionate utilization of the healthcare system and a value-based approach. A sister company is really an enterprise of various entities, and that's that one's Alvi Armani Enterprises. And what we mean by a conglomerate of different entities is that what we really are is in the hair space, in the hair rejuvenation space, and we're in different verticals in that space, be it products for maintenance, products for hair growth, surgical solutions, minimally invasive surgical solutions, injectable solutions, the whole gamut of solutions for individuals suffering from hair loss and hair thinning.
Yeah, interesting. I remember, Ash, the first time I even considered going in hair rejuvenation. And Peter, I don't think I told you this. We were on a board call. It was at the start of COVID, and we had been on it for an extended period of time. And I was feeling a little uppity or a little edgy. So I used to have this 90s rocker wig. So I went and put this thing on, had hair down to here. I just wanted to see if anybody was still paying any attention on Zoom. And Ash looked at me and goes, "Wow, you look really good." I'm like, "You need to go and grow your hair again." I said, "That ship has sailed long ago." "Oh, no, it hasn't. We're going to have a conversation." And that conversation sparked an interest and sparked the rejuvenation. So Ash, what's going on when guys are starting to lose their hair? Right? Some it starts at 18, some it starts at 20, but what's going on from two perspectives? One, physiologically, what's happening? And then emotionally, what are you seeing men are experiencing?
Yeah, it's no, thanks. And I'll kind of hit that in a second, but I was just while you were speaking, I was reminiscing on that day. What was that? 3 years ago now?
It was 4 years ago now. Yeah.
4 years ago now. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, we were just talking, and the next thing you know, Darius, my older brother was running the company at that juncture and was the lead surgeon. And before this guy's a doer, Darius goes, right? So when he's got his mind set on something, he goes. And, next thing I knew, he had visited the clinic, and right after that, he got the procedure, and it was pretty cool to see now 4 years.
You want to see something? Look at this.
Oh my God! Well, that's when you're really feeling yourself. That's like what we need is a before and after. but yeah, and you know, going back to your question, that it relates. I would pass it back to you. When we discussed during that conversation 4 years ago, we talked about that the option was there. We didn't really go into how you felt up to this point, whether it bothered you or anything of that sort. It was, the option is there, and once you knew the option was there, you went forward with it. But before that, was it something that you thought about, or was it just,
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I started losing my hair at 19. And it was after the death of my father. I didn't process that very well, moved away to school. Stress caused it. And I tell you, one of the most disappointing, or I don't know what the word is, emotionally challenging experiences you have as a 19-year-old is waking up every morning with a pillow full of hair, right? You can see it all just falling out. And then you start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm 19. I'm going to hide this for as long as I can. Fortunately, that was the 90s. Baseball caps were good because it's embarrassing when you lose your hair, especially at that young an age. And then you start comparing and contrasting yourself. So for me personally, I didn't like it. And then I eventually, I guess about 4 years in, came to the realization I can't stop this. So I may as well just shave my head and embrace it. I'm not going to hide it. This is what I have. These are the cards I've been dealt. And so I shaved my head. And then as it progressively receded and got worse, it was just pretty normal. But I would pass it over to Peter right now, because Peter and I have had this conversation and it didn't faze him at all.
Well, I started balding really in my 60s, the very top of my head. And I think it's genetics, because my father and my brothers all similarly. But for me, this age of baldness being so kind of embraced, it just seemed like a natural flow. So we're having this conversation, and I'm representing, I think, that population that's kind of like, hair. Why is that so important here? And you have an important viewpoint to share, both of you, and I think the audience should hear from Avi, from Ash, on why is it that people come to him? What has been his experience? You represent one interest or one experience, Darius, but how about the rest of the people out in our audience? What's an example, other examples of why people come?
Well, and this played out perfectly, because as you saw, both of you, sorry, Darius, for sharing, but if we were doing befores, you guys had similar domes, right? That physical manifestation had incredibly varying individual impacts on you. And my point in saying that is, while hair loss is common, so 2/3 of men by the time they're 35, and 80% of men at some point in their life, 50% of women by the time they're 50, and 80% by the time they're 75. Hair loss is very common, but the impact of hair loss is incredibly individualized. It's based off of individual characteristics themselves, what social pressures and extrinsic pressures the person's been, succumbed to in their life, what's important to that person, and what they hold as priorities. All those things kind of play into it, where each individual has a different type of response to losing hair. What I would say is the individuals that find our group specifically are individuals that do prioritize their hair significantly, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be for aesthetics, right? Which is kind of what we associate this with. but it can also be to mitigate loss. And so we go back to what Darius just talked about. You know, he went through his process. He began losing hair. At first, he was combative against it. He got sad a little bit about it. He got angry a little bit about it, and eventually he just accepted it. Well, you know, that's called grief, right? So there's different reasons why an individual might come to our group specifically, but that's the general reason. It's someone that, you know, has lost what they once had, and what they're seeing isn't reflective of what they're feeling, and they want those two things to meld a little bit better.
This is
Have you,
this is so
Peter?
in-
Have you? Sorry to interrupt. Have you? Everybody's experienced loss. Is there anything tangible you'd be willing to talk about in terms of loss and how that progress went for you?
Yeah, I would, but it wouldn't be associated with hair.
That's absolutely,
But
yeah.
but you know, I have mentioned this in a prior episode. I left Michigan. I left a scholarship at a time that I was just overwhelmed with a number of things: fatherhood, distance from home, marriage, and so it was just you know, a decision that a fork in the road that left me to abandon an opportunity that was the dream of a lifetime. You know, I was at the University of Michigan, and I didn't realize, I didn't have any context. I didn't realize I was a member of one of the greatest teams at the university. But because I didn't play a lot and because of all these other factors, I just made a poor decision. So that loss, that anger, and I want to come back to the emotions aspect of what you just mentioned, because it seems to be a theme that constantly runs in our podcasts, in all of the aspects of the different topics we've talked about, and the importance of being able to identify these emotions and how they affect us in our lives. But
Real quick,
nonetheless, go ahead.
can I connect that story with hair?
Yeah, please.
What would you do? What would you give to have that opportunity back? And I can tell you what it was for me. I had the similar experience with you in University of Michigan. I had what every person says at age 35, 40. I wish I could go back to college again and redo this and do it right. I spent $300,000 going back to law school to try it again. Right? What would you give to have that opportunity again? And that's the same thing with hair. They're not changing what they are. They want what they lost, and that's why they come to us.
I would say,
Yeah.
Ash, it's not only wanting what you lost, it's wanting to take that, at least in my situation, it's wanting to take that and integrate it with where I am today, right? So I want to bring those two worlds together and have the best of both of them.
You want the ability to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We're not talking about aesthetics. We're talking about you had the ability to do that, to have whatever look you wanted on that individual day because you had hair.
Yeah.
You lost that ability. You went through the stages of grief because of that. How much would you pay to resolve that loss?
Yeah, as well as a number of coping mechanisms that allayed, softened the grief, the loss. You know, the most obvious one was just, you know, shaving his head. But what else was going on? You know, what else happened in terms of maybe his ego? What happened in terms of his self-worth? You know, all of those things. Somewhat, you know, this is so multi-layered because it's multi-layered because of the socio-cultural, the family aspects of it, and because we, not being mindful, kind of come back to this. We're not aware. We're We're not paying attention. We're too distracted, and we don't see what's going on with us. It took me decades, kind of finishing the story about Michigan, decades to realize I was angry at life.
Yeah. What do I always say, Peter? When I think I'm awake, I'm in the middle of the deepest slumber that I ever possibly, and I think I'm awake now, which means somewhere I am dead asleep. I get it.
Yeah. But going
we
back,
learn from those things. We don't, we learn from those things and we progress forward as better beings. That's the hope.
Ash, the difference between Darius and I that I see is we're at kind of at opposite ends of the timeline. It happened to him really early, whereas for me, it happened, when men start to lose their hair. Do you see any differences there in terms of people who come to you?
And again, there's a medley of things, right? Okay, let's talk about females, right? It's a lot less socially acceptable for females to have hair thinning and balding because it's not a known entity, right? As soon as a female goes bald, they put on a wig. So we don't know what's going on under there, right? Yeah. There's females that will stop going outside in public because their hair is thinning. I mean, that's, whether that's appropriate or not is a whole nother issue. The suffering that goes with that and the solutions that can alleviate that are another bucket in itself. And so, the younger you have it, the more prone you are to social pressures, the less developed you are as an individual. Those things definitely play into it. Male, female, high-level executives. We had, without going into specifics, we have individuals that are CEOs and, high-profile positions that prior to coming to us, they would spend 2-3 hours a day making sure that their hair was right before they left, putting in Topic, putting in different devices to ensure that no one would know that they're losing hair. Whether it has an effect or not to the perceptions of others, who knows? But this is what's going on inside these individuals, which is torture, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know that very well. I have a CEO client, female, who had, and I want to get back to the topic of stress and the impact of stress that Darius mentioned earlier. She had $1 million deal go turn sour. It was actually fraud that was committed against her and her company. And she started to get into just a mental funk and started losing her hair. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between stress and hair loss, if you would, please.
Yeah. Inflammation is the enemy, my friends.
Meaning?
Anything that promotes inflammation is bad for the entire body from a holistic standpoint. And hair, we take this out. Don't ever do that. It's a sin in Alvi Armani, by the way, to pull out your hair. But, like Darius said, 100 of these fall out a day. Look at this tiny little thing. We discount the fact that each of these little things is a full functioning organ. Functioning organ that is able to replicate, able to produce color, able to synthesize keratin into hair, is able to do a number of things, right? So when you flood the follicles and the scalp with the actors within inflammation, and we go into those, but it's not as exciting. Then like anything else, it's going to affect hair growth. It's going to affect melanocytes, which are responsible for hair color. That's why you have significant graying or accelerated grading with increased stress. But, we often think as hair loss is permanent. Stress-induced hair loss is reversible, and the faster you lose it because of stress, the more reversible it is. And again, not to get in the weeds, but there's something called telogen effluvium where you could suddenly start losing clumps of hair, similar to what Darius was describing when he was younger from his incident with his father, and that certainly happens, and it certainly is reversible. But you have to be educated with the tools and resources necessary to take advantage of that reversibility.
You mean a case of beer doesn't help?
Oh no, a case of beer is necessary, but that's just that's a given. That's not part of the strategy.
So-
if you have two cases, then you might pour some on your hair too and see if that has any effect. We can run a clinical study. Who knows?
Be good for the brewing companies.
Yeah.
So we got stress, Ash. What else could be contributing to hair loss?
Anything that you could think of that you would say is bad for you is bad for your hair, right? When you think about the hair, it's in the skin and the head, so the scalp. You want to make sure your scalp is nourished, is moisturized, isn't dry, isn't getting too much UV radiation.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure your nutrients are good. The stuff you guys were talking about, I think we were talking offline, moringa,
Ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha. I could go down the list. Sage, saw palmetto, all these things are available. The growing body of evidence behind botanicals and their benefit and hair, skin, and various other modalities is fastly growing over the last 2 decades, and this stuff is becoming more and more commonplace to combat some of the issues. But other things in females, hormonal changes, post-pregnancy. We're lucky as males. Females have a whole another slew of things going on in terms of hair loss. For instance, ours is, it's androgen dependent.
Mm-hmm.
They have an androgen dependent mechanism and an androgen independent mechanism, just to convolute things. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere about females being more complicated, but I'm sure as heck not going to make
it. That's another episode. Yeah. That's another episode.
But yeah, so anything that you can think of. And if you got, and not to plug our own company, but we have a lot of great blogs on hair and scalp health, in addition to various botanicals and their benefits, science-based benefits, on originaire.com. And for any females or females in your life that might be listening, we put up a informational site because we feel that females are underrepresented in terms of hair loss therapies, called herhairhealth.com. Feel free to jump in and further educate yourselves.
Please plug your company. If it's helpful to the audience, even one person, please plug away.
Absolutely. Sure. If you want hair transplants, Alvi Armani all day.
So Ash, let's talk about some of the options now. We've talked about if it's bad for the body, it's bad for the hair, right? We need to make sure that we're taking care of the scalp. We're getting adequate nutrition. We are managing our stress levels. We're getting exercise. Once the hair loss has progressed, what are some of the options ranging from, topicals all the way through interventional? Give us a sense as to what people could potentially start looking into.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if we're going to, if we're going to do one take-home point for your listeners that are having difficulty emotionally from hair loss, it's that the new age. There's a plentiful amount of solutions, from completely non-invasive to invasive, that are available. We, going from a non-invasive standpoint, kind of the most non-invasive, we talk about some of the botanicals that we've been discussing and the growing body of evidence of how they help scalp and hair health. and leveraging those, and then maintenance products from a shampoo and conditioner standpoint. What I tell our team, both on the Presidium Health side and Alvi Armani side, is that as physicians, we have one rule, and all the other rules come secondary to that one rule, and that one rule is first do no harm. And the truth of the matter is a lot of the shampoos and conditioners we put out into the market over the past 50 years have been devastating to hair follicles globally. And it's just a matter of the products the ingredients we add into these products to make them trigger our senses and make them more sticky from a commercial standpoint are the same ingredients that are killing our hair follicles in terms of sulfates and parabens and polyphenols and things of that sort. Moving up from there, there's different medications, minoxidil, finasteride, and there's a few things in the pipeline that may be coming into the industry as well. Then you have a growing body of injectable stem cells, exosomes, platelet-rich plasma that have demonstrated efficacy and playing a part in hair rejuvenation. And then, of course, the coup d'etat, the permanent solution, the solution with the most control, and that gives the best results is hair transplantation. And then when you talk about hair transplantation, there's, like anything else in life, there's levels to this game.
I didn't realize there was so much research and science behind this, Ash.
Yeah, it's weird in healthcare. And what we've been trained as medical residents in the past and as med students is you got to do research to publish and get your name out there. The world of hair is the one exception.
Mm-hmm.
Post 2010, you had a few clinics, ourselves being one of the clinics, that were the only groups doing research in hair rejuvenation and hair loss therapies. The Affordable Care Act opened up a medley of research opportunities and funding opportunities for hair research. And because of that, what we're seeing is a growing body of evidence and growing number of individuals that are doing research in the field since 2010. And what they're finding is, to be honest, is what people in the Far East and Middle East have known for centuries and centuries. What we're doing is we're testing ingredients and botanicals known in those cultures to improve hair. And what we're finding is that their anecdotal evidence can go from anecdotal to research-based pretty quickly.
So Ash, if I'm 45, 50, just starting to notice hair loss, not everybody has access to a resource like you, who I had to basically just chart the course for me. How does someone get started? Where do they go to start learning about the options, learn a little bit more? What are some good resources they have available to them?
Yeah, and again, I'll mention, I try not to be, I'm not a very salesy
go ahead.
person, but the reason why I refer to our websites is because they've always, again, they're created in the vision of our founder, my brother, Dr. Babak. And with that, it's always ethics first. So we always want to educate first. So our websites are incredibly informational. Specifically in Alvi Armani, go to the hair transplants and hair restorations tab, and that's all informational stuff. hairhealth.com is a non-branded site, so they're not selling anything on there. It's strictly informational. And they're in the blog section for Originaire. We have been putting out blogs, and I think we have a total of 25, and we're planning on putting out one a week for the next year. So stay tuned. There'll be educational resources there as well.
It's fantastic.
I have a curveball for you. If I'm observing and stepping back, and you're doing the same with me, what do you say to somebody in the audience who's in denial?
Denial. Well, I wouldn't say you're in denial. You you're completely happy with you, right? That's not, I don't
Mhm.
think that's denial. I think that's a healthy place to be. I think the person that's in denial is the person that's not happy with the way they look, but they're telling themselves that this is it.
Well,
You know,
this is exactly where I'm going with this, because denial can take the form of coping mechanisms where you basically tell yourself stories that, yeah, I'm happy with the way I look because,
fair, fair.
and
Well,
this is just an observation of life that I've witnessed, I've seen. So I can imagine in this area where it's convoluted, it's perplexing. There's a lot of layers to this, but somebody who is feeling these emotions that we've talked about, they don't want to feel them, so they deny. And they tell themselves stories. They
absolutely.
develop coping mechanisms. So what do you say to somebody in our audience that's maybe in denial?
There's, if you're able, and this is easier said than done. Grief is a very difficult thing. Denial is a very complicated thing. Um, if you're able to find support and able to get yourself to open up and um, look at what's out there, you'll realize you don't need to be in denial. There's solutions to this problem now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, I think if I think about a call to action for this, the call to action is if this is something that's bothering you, this isn't 1980 anymore. There is
Yeah.
a range of options that are available based on how much it's bothering you, the level of investment that you're willing to make, and the extent of and how long that you want the results for. So in my mind, the call to action here is only our listener knows if it's really bothering them or not. Right? They're the only person that can actually take that holistic look inside and say, no, I'm comfortable with this. I don't need to do anything, or I want to dip my toe in the water and see if this can work, or I'm going to make a fundamental change in how I look. So the call to action is to take that look inside and then look at the options that are out there, because Ash has touched on what, a dozen different potential options for people that want to make a change.
He has. He has. But Darius, the approach that I'm suggesting here is that people our audience take a real close look at what are you feeling? Are you hiding from the grief? Are you hiding from the loss?
Yeah.
And then start exploring, what are my options? Like Ash has suggested, there are lots of options. And like you just mentioned, this is in 1980.
Yeah.
I have two pictures up front in front of you. One from when you had hair, and one from right now. One, which one do you like more? And two, if you like the one with hair more, does it bother you enough where it's right? And that's a good objective way to look at
Well
this. And
said.
again, remember, it's very individualized. And again, 80% of males are going to have this. You're not alone in these feelings. This is my brother got introduced to Alvi Armani in 2002 when he first had his procedure. Hair loss very much bothered him. He was a very confident man, and hair loss was affecting that confidence, because what he was feeling inside isn't what he was seeing in the mirror.
Hmm.
He's also a guy, as am I, who's been raised to be very that stuff shouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're both from Palmdale, which is kind of a little rougher area in Los Angeles. So our comments were, "This isn't very Palmdale." It took Bobak 3 years of research. He interviewed Antonio Armani 5 times, flew out to Toronto in order to do it. And when he did it, oh man, watch out. He was a new man, not a new man. He was
himself.
He was the man he was.
He was himself.
Yeah. And a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
So, Peter, before we close, we usually do a poem. Any poem or words that you want to share with everybody?
Well, I really was hoping we'd get guests to come with poems, and maybe Ash has one.
Yeah, I always go with I love poetry, but my favorite poet is Tupac Shakur, and he's got a lot
Ah,
of them. And death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss in life is what dies inside when we're still alive. Never surrender.
oh, I love that.
That's
Awesome.
wonderful.
Yeah, very well said.
Well, Ash, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for coming on and educating our audience. We really appreciate it. For everyone listening, the podcast, if you have comments, go to agedifferently.com, click on the podcast underneath. Welcome to provide comments, questions, feedback, whatever you have. And Ash, thank you once again. Really, really
Yes, thank
appreciate
you,
your
Ash.
time and wisdom.
Thank you
Gents,
very much.
I appreciate the time, fellas, and thank you for the listeners for taking the time to entertain us.